Welcome to Upleveling, the podcast dedicated to building better leaders, smarter systems, and bigger results. If you're a busy business owner and you have no time to waste, but you want to make sure your bookkeeping is accurate and you're making decisions off of it, this episode is for you. You don't need to be a CPA. You just need quick checks and balances in place each month to determine that your numbers are accurate. Before we hop into it, let's talk a little bit about why this matters. The reason is messy or incorrect, incomplete books are going to lead to bad decisions, because then you're not making decisions off accurate data. That means that you may not get the expected outcome that you think. So we want to make sure if we're making decisions off of data, it is good data. We also want to make sure that we're not missing tax savings. If your books are not right, then you have no idea how much money you've made, and you have no idea how much money to set aside each month or each quarter for taxes. And you don't want to get into a place to where you get behind on that, because it can be very hard to overcome. And then the last thing is cash flow surprises. If you're looking at incorrect books or messy books, you're going to have a lot of cash flow surprises, because you can't plan accordingly. You can't look back on your numbers and start to recognize patterns and trends that would help you in your cash flow. So we want to eliminate as many surprises as we can, and we do that with good bookkeeping. And the thing is, even if you outsource this to someone else, and if you don't, talk to me at Align CPA, because it's exactly what we do and who we help. But even if you outsource, you're still the CEO, and your job is to review those financials and to receive them and make decisions off of them, or to receive them and ask more questions. I think some of the things that we come across at Aligned with business owners is they feel like they are supposed to know these things, or they already should know these things. Maybe there's a lot of shame around not understanding financials. And I want to really encourage you to let go of that. Let that ego set aside and really learn what all of these financial documents and information means, because that's going to give you the superpowers you need to grow the business and to continue to improve it. So even if, like I mentioned before, you have someone who is highly qualified, a professional that is handling your bookkeeping, it's still your job to look at it, review it, make decisions based off of it, and to understand it ultimately. And it's also going to help you catch problems early before they snowball. I mentioned a minute ago about looking at trends and patterns. It's going to help you make future decisions. It's going to help you see when things are coming up. It's going to help you see if there's issues. For instance, if you're not paying attention to your cost of labor, then your profits at the end of the year could really suffer, because that's something that you really need to stay on top of every single month. And the longer that you let problems or issues carry on, the bigger they become, hence the snowball. So I'm going to give you a 5-minute monthly bookkeeping review checklist. Here is what I would look at and what you should look at every single month when you get these financials. You can also request different financials. One of the things I want to talk about first is our profit and loss, but it can be very hard to look at one month by itself and interpret that. So what I would do is get a rolling 12-month profit and loss. That means it's going to show you the end of last month and the previous 11 months before that. That way, even if you are in a cyclical or a seasonal business, you are kind of evening some of that out. Here's a good example. What I mean by that, let's say a CPA firm. If they do a lot of tax-only work, they don't want to look at their P&L for January to June to predict the rest of the month because they probably collected a lot more because of that tax season. But what they could do is run a previous 12-month P&L, and that will even some of that out. So we're going to look at that P&L. Ask yourself for this particular month, does this revenue make sense? Now, that question is going to be difficult to answer based on how high your revenue is, but let's just say you're somewhere in the $100,000 to $1 million a year business. Then you need to look at that revenue every single month and say, does this make sense? Does this make sense at where we were at last month, what we've added, what we've subtracted? This is where you're being a little bit analytical. Then you want to look at your expense categories and say, does this look too high or too low? It doesn't mean that it's inaccurate, but it's going to help you ask the questions and get some of those answers behind it. When you're looking at that P&L, you want to look for things like miscellaneous, uncategorized, ask my accountant. None of those are real things. And so if you're seeing dollars in those categories, send it back to the bookkeeper, okay? Because every dollar needs to have a home or a bucket. So we're going to put all of our dollars into buckets so we know where they went. And miscellaneous is not a bucket that we want to have. Next, we're going to look at the balance sheet. So this particular financial report is something that I think most owners ignore when I would say it is the most important report to look at. And the reason is if your balance sheet is incorrect, more than likely your profit and loss is. And so we don't even want to look at the profit and loss. We want to look at the balance sheet. So the balance sheet is going to show you what you own versus what you owe on a particular day, usually the last day of the month. And so you want to go down every single line item on this balance sheet and ask yourself, does this make sense? You're going to first see your checking accounts or your cash, and that needs to reconcile to a bank statement. So you would ask your bookkeeper, has this been reconciled? Let me see the report. And so if it's done correctly, then you know that your checking accounts are accurate and you can move on. You're going to see other things like fixed assets. You're going to see loans. You're going to see money to owners. You want to look at all of that. And again, we're asking ourselves, does this make sense? If we have loans on our books, is the balance going down every single month? Because if you're making monthly payments, it should. Is there a category for shareholder distributions? Is there money in it? If you know you've taken money out of the company, there should be. It's just things like that that you want to pay attention to and ask the questions. You don't necessarily need to be a financial advisor or CPA or anything around that. You just simply need to ask better questions and have someone to ask it to. Because if you have an in-house bookkeeper or if you have an outsourced bookkeeper, you should be able to ask these questions and get good, solid answers. For instance, if one of our clients called and said, hey, I want to see my bank reconciliation, it's already in your file. The bookkeepers just pull that out and send it to you. Those are things that are being done every single month, and you know if it's reconciled, it's correct. And then we want to ask one question. So to that bookkeeper, to that person who's handling this, ask them, can you walk me through these financials? And I've always said that financials tell a story. So your bookkeeper should be able to use those financials to tell you a story. Now, if they look at you like a deer in headlights and have no idea what you're talking about, you may want to get a second opinion. But if they know what is going on in the company and they understand accounting foundations and they understand bookkeeping, they can absolutely walk you through that. They should be able to tell you, hey, here's what happened with our cash account. We invested in this equipment. We paid off these loans. You took a big draw. And then they should tell you on the P&L side, we had a really good month. Our bank deposits were higher than normal, or we had this big expense we weren't expecting, or we made this investment. Remember, we hired this marketing company. The list could really go on, but the idea is that you should be able to ask that question every single month and have them walk you through it. Their ability to explain this to you is going to build trust or reveal gaps. So just keep that in mind. Ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, you are the CEO and you do need to understand this information because you need to be able to see if it's accurate and you can make good decisions off of it. I want you to use this checklist every month. Make it a recurring calendar item. You guys know how much I love putting things on the calendar because remember, if they're not on the calendar, they are not going to happen. So you don't need to do the books, but you must understand them if you want to continue to grow. And if you're not confident in your numbers, let's talk. Align CPA specializes in bookkeeping, and you can actually use this information to make better business decisions. Thanks for tuning in to Upleveling. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more entrepreneurs like you discover the show. Let's keep the conversation going. Connect with us on social media or visit aligncpa.com for resources and updates. Until next time, keep leading, optimizing, and upleveling.